And crime in Canada is on the rise again.
We have a housing crisis in Canada.
The skyrocketing cost of living is difficult for both people who've lived in Canada for a long time.
More than 80,000 people were known to be homeless in 2024.
In a single month, 1.5 million Canadians relied on a food bank.
Justin Trudeau's allowed this to happen, allowed this crisis to get worse.
We need to make Canada great again.
What he is proposing to do is to make Canada great again. That is not what Canadians want.
I was born and raised in Sherwood Park, outside of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I've lived there my entire life. I'm currently spending my winters in Mexico because I'm getting a little more frustrated with the way things are going in Canada. But I still love my summers there. My favorite ski trips are there. My favorite people live in Canada. I love every time I get to go home. Just the nature that we have. I live on a big lake in Kelowna now. We have mountains surrounding us, amazing hiking. We have the best golf, the best wineries. There's a lot of things in Canada that are really great. The people are incredible. Some of the nicest people you'll meet in the entire world. Over the last, I'm just going to say 15 years of my life. So, you know, post high school, actually getting a job. I'm 35 years old now, and I've paid significant amounts of taxes in Canada, and I've seen a lot of things change in the more recent years. I'd say in the last 5 to 10 years, it's changed a lot. One of the things that's happening right now in the United States that I find extremely fascinating is the Doge. They are going through the government and finding inefficiencies and exposing them and showing where some of these slush funds go to. And Canada is absolutely just as bad at this as the United States has been over the last 20 years. You know, in the US, Doge right now is responsible for finding $4 billion a day in savings, and they're trying to cut $1 trillion off their balance sheet. Canada's balance sheet's at 2.1 trillion now too. We need to cut $1 trillion off as well. And so this video has 5 different parts to it. We're going to be going through 10 of the biggest taxpayer fails that I've been able to find over the last 20 or 30 years in Canada. Hundreds of billions of dollars just disappeared of taxpayer money. Then I have just 10 funny grants that we've given out that are public information, and it's insane, where we're sending money to different countries to create festivals or talk about 2S LGBTQR code I plus community that we have in Canada now. We're going to talk about the housing crisis. Housing prices have skyrocketed in Canada. I think we have record levels of unaffordability right now, and you can just feel the struggle from almost everyone I know that owns a house or owns rentals. It's been terrible for us over the last 10 years. Then we're going to talk about the taxation in Canada. We have some of the highest tax rates in the world, and just what we actually have as taxes on goods in Canada is absurd. Yesterday, my fiance and I were buying flights to go back to Canada. We just charge immigrant fees now. I think other countries do this as well, but it's pretty mind-blowing to me about all these taxes and fees that have been put on top of our hard-earned money. Then we're going to talk about just like our economic GDP. We're going to touch a little bit on the healthcare system in Canada too. If you ever read Peter Attia's book called Outlive, I think Canada's stuck in medicine 2.0 by putting band-aids on problems and not going to the root cause of what those problems are. And our pill pushers in Canada. Almost everyone I know is on some kind of pill in Canada. And so we're going to break that down. I do want to make it clear though, I love Canada. I want to see change. My goal of this video and sharing these topics is really, I think that these are the biggest areas that we need to focus on over the next decade to get Canada back on track. We've swung really far left and we've wasted lots of money, and it's time to just bring it back to the middle. Let's focus on Canadians. Let's make Canada rich again. We have some of the greatest natural resources and most land mass available to any country in the world. And I think there's a lot of things that we could do to make the country better. So let's dive right into this. This is going to be part 1. And we're going to talk about the 10 biggest taxpayer fails, funded projects with taxpayer money in Canada that have failed, made things worse in some cases, and or were just a complete waste of money. In total, we're going to be talking about $154 billion. This does not include all the projects. These are just some of the biggest ones that I could find. And then the overspend on these projects. So if you had $150 billion in projected spend, we've actually spent over $33 billion more dollars on just these projects alone. I want to say this is a subset of projects within Canada. It's a subset. It's only 10. There's thousands. So you can kind of do the math in your own head of how much we've wasted in Canada of taxpayer money, the shit we work so damn hard for. And I am always curious, where do my tax dollars actually go? What are some of the weirdest ones we've done? Like the Great Maple Syrup Heist of Canada. Someone stole like $15 million worth of maple syrup. We spent $30 million in legal fees and never got the maple syrup back. That's net negative $48 million of taxpayer money on maple syrup. Lost maple syrup. I don't even know how someone stole that much maple syrup. It's absolutely insane. So number one, the National Shipbuilding Procurement Strategy. This was a federal project. It was launched in 2010. The projected budget was over $100 billion. We've spent well over that, and there's no end in sight. It was made to modernize Canada's Navy and Coast Guard. The program was riddled with delays, cost overruns, mismanagement. The program has yet to provide anything to Canada. Our military has not got stronger, and the tax bill just keeps getting bigger and bigger. We have empty dockyards, increased budget costs, and the shipyard footage is just not actually making Canada's military stronger. So completely failed, over $100 billion. Trans Mountain Pipeline Expansion, federal, $7.4 billion project budget. We end up spending 30.9. Where does this go? Like, how do you mismanage a project that freaking much? It's actually like taxpayer money has had to bail this project out, and it's not even done. And so you just think about these projects and how mismanaged they are. Less than $10 million budget, you spend $31 billion on it. You can't keep doing that as a country, otherwise you go into debt. Now we have $2 trillion worth of debt we need to pay off. The ArriveCAN app. This one pisses me off the most because I think it was the most useless app ever. It made traveling in Canada a nightmare. It's not required anymore. We don't even need it. I heard it was a slush fund. It was only supposed to be $80,000. We spent $54 million on it. That money for sure just went into politicians' pockets. If you look at Justin Trudeau, his average salary throughout his career, as prime minister was $197,000. His net worth ballooned to $95 million. Nearly $100 million. And if you actually probably take a few things out of it and his divorce, this man on $200,000 a year somehow turned that into $100 million. That opportunity is not available to any Canadian. I don't know how you can do that legally. I just don't. I can't see it. ArriveCAN, total scam. Never should have done that. Never should have funded that project. Muskrat Falls Hydro. Here we go again. $7.4 billion. It's cost over $13 billion. Intended to supply affordable renewable power to Atlantic Canada. With it overrunning, the electricity rates in Newfoundland and Labrador actually skyrocketed, and then now taxpayers once again are paying to bail this project out. Doesn't make any sense. This Phoenix Pay system was to streamline our federal payroll. We've hired a lot of people into the federal government over the last handful of years. Lots of immigrants. We pay them tons of money. They don't have to go to work in the office. One of the biggest things they're doing in the US right now is every single lease that the government has, they're going through. And if people aren't going to the office 5 days a week, they're either getting let go, or they have to go back to the office, or they're getting out of that lease. You could save billions of dollars by doing that. That's another failed project that was targeted to be $309 million in spend, and we spent $3.5 billion on it. Ottawa LRT Confederation Line, $2.1 billion. But I don't think this project is actually done. It remains unreliable, always requiring expensive repairs, further taxpayer funding. It's a joke. It's just an absolute joke, that Ottawa LRT, and you can read all about it on Reddit or just go and Google it or talk to ChatGPT. These things are just sad. Ontario smart metering project cost $1 billion, ended up costing $2 billion. Again, another completely mismanaged product. We spent an extra $1 billion. Canada's infrastructure bank, $35 billion budget, not even completed yet. It just failed us completely. $35 billion. Hamilton LRT, $1 billion. It was actually canceled, and we spent hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer funding on it. Hundreds of millions of dollars of our taxpayer hard-earned money went into a project that was canceled. It's just sad. How are we mismanaging money like this? And then the PHA, the Public Health Agency, must have bought a bunch of ventilators for COVID, and we spent $237 million on that. At some point, I could get into this on how much money we sent to Ukraine and how many of these we sent to Ukraine, but that's a whole nother story to talk about how much money we actually send out of country every single year. I found a really good tweet. Maybe I'll jump into it throughout this video. And that is the top 10 biggest tax-funded projects that we have paid for that have, I feel like, kind of screwed us. I don't feel like this is adding value to us. And so I'm just going to quickly pull up this tweet. Annual salary of $379. I was wrong, not $179. $379,000 Canadian. His net worth is now $96 million. This is like Nancy Pelosi. Like, we should really investigate how he made this money. It should be public information how everyone makes their money. And I'm just curious, like, candidly, like, how do you make less than 400 grand a year, pay the taxes we have to pay, and then turn that into almost $100 million? So how do you do that one? And then there's another one here. Global Affairs Canada spending 2017 to 23. There has been a 52 billion spent international assistance. So this money goes overseas. Out of the 52, Africa got 18 billion. Oh, it's also a 91% increase in spending. Why are we doing this? Canada has enough problems of its own, which I'm clearly identifying here. And, you know, Ukraine received 5.84 billion. You know, it's health and sexual and reproductive rights. Like, why aren't we doing, put this money into Canada? Other aid expenditures. We should know what all this is. This is what Doge is doing. It's exposing where this money went. You can see where this went. Any money that goes to Afghanistan, like, why are we sending this much money? 5 billion, a billion, a billion, a billion, 928 million, Tanzania, 800, like, this is insane. Insane amounts of money we're talking about here. Taxpayer dollars here. He doesn't really mess around either. Global Affairs Canada. You look at all of these other departments we have. Our police, 33 billion, 100 million. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Department of National Defense, 37 million. We have one of the smallest militaries in the world. Not to mention, I think, maybe one of the most pathetic if you talk about it. Really sad stats that you're seeing here. Where you're seeing the money go, it's just an insane amount. Refugees and like, what are we doing here? Why are we sending money to all these places? Another policy markers, selected funds. DEI's dead. I think we've already, we're past that now. Let's move forward. You know, climate change. I know it's happening, but at the end of the day, Canadians shouldn't be paying like significantly more than the rest of the world is. If China and the US don't have these taxes, why does Canada? Moving into the next part of this video, we're going to talk about some of the grant money, and there are tens of thousands of these that just don't make sense. Why are we approving these grants? This is not what we need to be focused on. This shouldn't be public money that gets sent off to different universities in different countries to support things that make absolutely no sense. I mean, here we go. These are just 10 crazy grants that I wish I never knew about. 1, gender politics in Peruvian rock music. However, that's important to Canadians. That is a grant that we've given away. Deconstructing karaoke culture in Canada, $40,000. What? The impact of hot dog consumption and Canadian identity. What does our identity have to do with anything about the amount of Costco hot dogs that we're consuming? Why did we give someone $15,000 to study that? Exploring the sociology of drag queen performances. Oh, sweet baby Jesus. I'm not even going to get started on this one. Board game culture in Canada. Oh, where are we going with this? Impact of internet memes on social discourse. While memes are influential, public funding shouldn't be analyzing the sense of humor on the internet. You're never going to be able to catch up with it. This one kills me. My fiance loves to watch cat videos. Cat videos and social connection. Why are we sending money to students to study this stuff? Why is this important? Cat videos and social connection. This is a real thing happening in Canada. The role of coffee culture in workplace dynamics, studying the impact of Pokemon Go on physical activity levels. Come on now, people. And then the psychology of online dating profiles. It's tough times. I wish we weren't giving this much money away in the first place, considering it's taxpayer money, but we should just have more of an approval process for things that actually matter, that are going to make our country better. I don't think that the amount of hot dogs that you consume every single year impact your identity, if you're Canadian or American, Mexican, European, wherever you may be from. How many hot dogs you eat every single year isn't going to make a difference? Absolute insanity. Moving on to the next part of this. Over the last 10 years, the demographic of Canada has changed a lot. You go to a place like Vancouver, you'll see lots of Chinese people. You go to the suburbs of Vancouver, it's very much Indian. And I've noticed it in Edmonton. You definitely see it in Toronto. Toronto is probably the most multicultural place that we have in Canada. But the demographic of Canadians when I was growing up, you know, there were like almost like token different races in my high school. There were like a handful of people out of hundreds. Now it's getting closer to probably 25-30%. In a few years, it'll probably be more than 50%. In 2 generations, there's several studies on this. It actually will be more than 50%. Your kid as a Canadian-born citizen, as a Canadian, would actually be a minority in the classroom in 20 years from now. Crazy thing to talk about. So let's just kind of look at some of the policy changes that have led to some of these unintended consequences, and then what we can do going forward to actually make this a little bit better. It's impacted our rising housing costs, it's impacted our healthcare system, it's impacted wages, and even just pressure on public services because we have so many immigrants coming into Canada. In 2000, 227,000 people were immigrants were allowed into Canada. In 2023, we let nearly 500,000. And now this is permanent residents we're letting into Canada every single year. In 2023 alone, Canada added over nearly 1.2 million people, including foreign workers, international students, and asylum seekers. Some of those people we candidly don't really want in our country. I think if you have a criminal record, you should have to legally immigrate to Canada. I think every country can agree with that. We don't want murderers or rapists or criminals moving into our country for the obvious reasons, but we can't allow over 500,000 people into Canada every single year. It's growing 4 times faster than the United States, yet we only have 1/10 of the population. So why are we doing this? I do not understand. If you come as an international student and you are actually going to school, you're not working on the side and collecting an income, then you can't stay past the visa that we've been giving you as a student visa for the 3, 4, 5 years that it may be. And then you stay after illegally, and we are letting those people stay in our country and then become permanent residents, even if they never got the degree. So the biggest thing that I've noticed, and living in Canada, I can speak from experience. I've had cars broken into, our office has been broken into, my house has been not broken into yet, but I have had someone circling it before. I have it on my cameras. My neighbors have had their houses broken into. Many bikes of my friends have been stolen around town. It's quite a sad thing to see. You see robberies happen in businesses and on our main little street in Kelowna. It's crazy how much it's changed. Like, growing up in Canada, I didn't need to lock my doors. I always felt safe no matter where I was. And when you go to the larger cities now, you get to like East Hastings and Vancouver. Some of these areas are extremely decrepit and scary, and you won't actually feel safe there. Now, I spend a lot of time in Mexico. There's also a lot of very unsafe places here, but you can kind of tell the difference in Mexico. There's a massive demographic in a lot of these places, or the barrios are filled with people who don't have any wealth, and they live very frugal lives in dirt huts. It's just like a different type of poverty that they have in Mexico. In Canada, these people seem to be doing okay with their lives, and then get hit with a few hard circumstances. A lot of them get addicted to drugs, and a lot of ugly things just start happening. It's really sad to watch, but our crime and illegal immigration over the last 10 years, I've noticed increase a lot. So in 2023, we found violent crime increased 39% since 2015. There's a lot more stats about this in the major cities about gang activities, and they're 100% due to immigration policies. These are not gangs of Canadians, and these happen with illegal border crossings. We have the Roxham Road in Quebec. Tens of thousands of people have crossed over into Canada illegally and now live here. And the government's been spending billions of dollars on accommodating these illegal entrants as well, which is even more terrifying. They're paying for hotel rooms, we're giving them monthly salaries, and they literally don't belong here. And that's Canadians' money that's going to these people who should just have to go through the proper process to become a Canadian. That's at least my belief. If you disagree, let me know why you disagree with that. I feel like we should have a strict process and no illegal immigration at all. Cut down on it. We know if these people are coming into the country, we're giving them money. We should kick them out and do whatever needs to be done to reel this back in, make Canada great for Canadians first and foremost. That's the whole point of the government, not for illegal entrance into our country. Also caused a housing crisis. I've seen this in Kelowna. The first house I bought doubled in value in 7 years. I bought it for $600,000, sold it for $1.2 million, 6.5, almost 7 years later. Doubled in price. My current house that I bought in 2019, it's now 2025. It's up more than 65%. So while it's went down the last couple of years, the growth that I've seen in Kelowna in my real estate portfolio is absurd. So when it drops 2 or 3% for the next 5 years, it'll still be hard to catch up to that 60% it's increased over the last 5 years. And so the average price in Canada from 2003 to 2020-23 has risen by 227%. The average house price used to be $207,000, which seems very affordable for a first-time home buyer or a family. 200 grand, you can get a mortgage for that. Now that house would cost $678,000. In that same 20-year time period, we've only seen earnings grow by 74% from $35,000 to $62,000 is now the average salary for a person in Canada. And now we're talking about 40 million people, and the average is here. If you zoom in on the condo market in Vancouver or in even residential in Vancouver, you're going to see houses that cost $500,000 that now cost $2 or $3 million. Some of these, this is the average across the entire country. So there are definitely little bubbles and pockets where these numbers have been blown out of proportion, and house prices have went up 450%, 490% in places like Toronto and Vancouver over the last 2 decades. Like, this is insane how much growth we've seen in the cost of housing, and it creates massive affordability challenges. Almost, I'd say 80% of the Canadians I know are in some sort of financial struggle right now after everything that's happened post-COVID. Just inflation with the cost of everything is like 3 or 4 times more. It feels like gas has probably doubled. Groceries are at least 3 to 5 times more expensive now. Our property taxes have went up. Our health insurance taxes have went up. CPP, EI, all these things just keep going up. They take more money from us and things get more expensive. Yet our wages aren't growing, which creates this affordability problem. And by 2022, 14.5% of Canadian households expressed dissatisfaction in the affordability of their home. It's up about 3.5% since 2018, and it's up nearly 10% for renters as well, being unhappy with the price of rents. These rising costs create all kinds of financial burdens, like mortgage payments, property taxes, and utilities for the average Canadian on a normal priced house would cost them 58.4% of their income. Now, if you're also getting taxed, all the taxes that we have in Canada, you're going to average out at 35%. Where do you get money to live? I don't understand how this keeps getting worse. In the fourth quarter of 2023, the all-time high of needed financial bandwidth was 63.8% of the average person's income was going to their housing. That's completely unaffordable. We need to build more houses. We need to lower the prices of houses, and we need to have more competitive mortgage rates so that we can actually get this industry booming again. We can't be banning Airbnb in cities across Canada. That financially ruined many of my friends. And a lot of people are underwater on these units now. The prices are coming down and they're underwater on them. This is just a bloodbath of a market. You look at places in Ontario, outside of Toronto, places outside of Vancouver, it's completely unaffordable now. And it's just unfair, in my opinion, to Canadians. When you have to pay 50 to 60% of your income for your housing costs, what goes towards your medical care, your groceries, all the other essential goods, putting your kids in school and sports, living a good life, enjoying your life, being a happy, healthy human, paying for your gym membership, all the things that are luxuries in life have to be questioned. And that's a sad place to be in. When your taxes are so high, but also your costs are so high, it just creates this massive challenge for everyone. And so I could dive a lot deeper into just the housing crisis that we have in Canada, but Trudeau said he was going to build 250,000 homes a year.
We need more housing in Canada, but that the government should step up and make sure that housing gets built, that's where some people disagree. Take federal lands, land that's owned by the federal government that isn't being used anymore. The Conservative Party leader wants to sell it all off to make a quick buck. That does nothing for you. The federal government owns tons of land in cities and towns across the country. You could build a lot of homes on those lands, so that's what we're going to do. We're offering up that public land for housing. And we're not just going to sell it all to developers, we're going to long-term lease it. See, by leasing the land, we get to work with communities to make sure that home builders are building the right homes, homes you can afford. We've got land, we got lots of houses to build, so that's exactly what we're going to do.
That has not been happening we're not even close to that number. So something needs to change here. And at the end of the video, I kind of talk into the things that I think we could change that will make our lives better. Now let's just talk about like taxes, because these taxes are disgusting. Taxes in Canada are the most frustrating thing for me. And I'll give you a couple examples. I'm not going to talk about number figures exactly, but I'll give you a high level breakdown. If you make $1 million a year in Ontario or in BC, the government more than likely is going to be taking somewhere between $450,000 and $550,000 of your income. Now, you have to pay EI, you have to pay CPP. That comes off every single paycheck. And it's honestly, whether you're going to use it or not in the future, who freaking knows? If they even exist in 20, 30 years when we can actually use them when we're 65. That's 30 more years for me. I don't have a lot of faith in Canada. I try to pay the least amount of money possible into that. I don't even take a salary anymore. When we sold the business, my employees, for how long they worked at their company, it was included in their severance. We gave them 6 months, and we gave them a bonus depending on how long they worked at the company. Now, some of those bonuses were in the low seven figures, not quite 7 figures. I guess it's US dollars. Sure, conversion. Let's just call it $1 million. Goes to someone. That person, because it's a gain, they have to claim it as income. It puts them in the highest tax bracket, and then they get taxed through the roof, and it's over 50%. And so, when my employees got that, one that had worked for me for 8 years, had to pay 4 years of that work to the government. I don't think that's fair. I think we should change this. So let me talk a little bit more about why Canada has one of the highest tax rates in the developed world for first world countries, and ways that we can change it or at least make it a little bit better. Let's go into this. So let's talk about how much taxes have went up over the last 20 years. In 2000, the top federal tax per income, this is on your income, was 29%. In 2016, they raised it to 33%. Combine that with provincial taxes, the top marginal tax rate in Canada is 53%, and it exceeds 50% in several provinces. Quebec's at 53%, Ontario's at 53%, and in Nova Scotia, it's 54%. Half of your income is taken by the government to go to those projects that never happened and don't make our lives better. Also, corporate taxes driving businesses away. Count me in on this. I got my US visa in the mail. I got a Mexican passport on the way as well. And I'll still have my Canadian passport, but there's no way I would ever start another business in Canada ever again. Because Canada's combined corporate tax rate's 42.9%. Again, to build a business with that high of a tax rate when you could go to a place like Puerto Rico and pay 0%, or even in like a Florida or a Nevada, pay 12, 13, 15%, whatever it might be, you're still way ahead. 42.9% makes it very hard to build a business. It had been reduced in 2012, but then we increased it again. So it just keeps getting higher and higher. That's just on our personal and business taxes. Where we actually get the most screwed, in my opinion, in Canada is once we pay those taxes on our income every single year, it's the taxes we pay on the essential services that we need every single day. Andrea and I were buying our flights the other day, like I said, and there was $290 on taxes on $1,000 worth of flights. It's just bullshit. Bullshit. 29% on flights. I already paid taxes, a ton in taxes this year. Now you're taxing me on everything I buy as well. We have sales tax, GST, HST, and PST can go from 5 to 15%. We have a carbon tax, which has increased 170% since 2019. Not sure where all that money's going, because our energy costs and our food costs are just up, and up. Like, you're charging us way more every single year, but you're also increasing the taxes on it. Our property taxes have doubled in the last 20 years. Payroll taxes continue to go up every single year since 2015. The luxury taxes are also savage. I know most of my friends have loopholes where they start companies in other provinces to avoid paying the certain luxury taxes on goods. Like if you want to buy a boat and it costs more than 185 grand or 135 grand, something like that, or a car. If it's more than 135 grand, it's a tiered system up to about 250, where you're going to end up paying 30% tax on a thing that you bought. Money you earned, and you pay taxes on that money, and then to buy it, you pay another luxury tax just because you can afford to buy a $250,000 boat. It's such bullshit. Such bullshit. Our, like, land transfer tax, if you sell a property, you sell $1 million home, you got a $32,000 fee in land transfer tax. Like, it's just unnecessary costs. You know, each family of four on average in Canada pays $2,500 a month for groceries. We were just about to get a $1,000 rebate in British Columbia because our groceries have went up in pricing so much, $1,000 to every single family in Canada. They scrapped that because Trump threatened tariffs, which were then renegotiated and not put on us, but the $1,000 is canceled. That's bullshit. This is where it's just driving me absolutely nuts. And so a person making $80,000 per year loses nearly $25,000 of that in combined taxes before paying rent or bills or doing anything nice in your life. This is unfair. This does not need to be like this. If our government controlled spending and our GDP was actually growing, we'd be out of this problem. But you have to significantly cut excess spending. If I go back and reference that tweet that we talked about earlier, $52 billion last year in government assistance to other countries. Keep that $52 billion for Canadians. Make Canada great again for Canadians. That's what I want. That's it. That's it. That's it. So where does this money actually go? The taxpayer money. Where does it all go? If Canadians are paying so much in tax and healthcare is overwhelmed, housing unaffordable, and infrastructure is failing, where does this money actually go? Well, despite record spending on healthcare, wait times for medical procedures are longer than ever. The ER time in a major city is over 14 hours. You have an emergency. You go to the hospital. You pay for this public health care that we have. You will be told to wait for 14 hours. Come on now. I hate Canadian healthcare. We're so stuck in medicine 2.0. I'll talk about it in a bit. Infrastructure. Everything's over budget. Everything is delayed. Complete bullshit. Public sector growth. All of our growth in Canada has been the government hiring people that we don't fucking need there. If you look at what Elon Musk did with Twitter, he went and cut 80% of the staff, made the product better, all-time usage highs, and literally got rid of people who weren't working and wasting money and didn't want to come to the office. If we did two things in Canada. First, if you work for the government and you collect a salary from our government with our taxpayer money, you have to go to the office 5 days a week and work 40 hours a week. You're not working from home anymore. That's bullshit. We have hundreds of millions of dollars in leases of empty offices that people don't show up to that work for the Canadian government. The US has found hundreds of billions of dollars of this. And they're finding $4 billion a day. We can do this in Canada. And then the last point of this, where does all the tax money go? Foreign aid. International affairs, $52 billion. This is insane how much money we give to other countries to teach them shit about Canadian French or the LGBTQ or how to put on a condom or not to shit on a beach in Nigeria. I'm not kidding. These are real grants. You can go and read about them on Global International Affairs Canada. It's literally public information. Their website was taken down and a lot of it's busted right now because many people like me are researching it and curious about what the fuck is actually going on, who approves this stuff. What's actually broken here? We're gonna wrap up this tax section here. So what's broken? High taxes, shitty services, overtaxing the middle class, massive, gigantic, enormous public waste, and chasing away investment. High corporate taxes is making companies that wanted to start their business or were Canadians who started amazing companies. There's hundreds, if not thousands of them that are exiting the country because they just know that it's too hard to get ahead here. That's terrible. We want them to stay in Canada. We want great businesses to be built in Canada. So how do you fix this? Number one, lower income taxes for middle earners. Number two, cut this carbon tax and this payroll tax increase every single year out. Lower all tax brackets. You guys don't need that much. Stop spending so much. Shrink government spending. I mean, cut all this bullshit out. How did Trudeau, making $397,000 a year, get a $100 million net worth? Someone please explain that to me. It doesn't make sense. Shrink the spending. Stop letting these government, ancient, nepotist officials enrich themselves while the rest of the country is going broke. That's it. They're doing it in the US. Everyone should get investigated. If your net worth went from couple $1 million to $100 million while you were the Prime Minister of Canada, we should know how you made that much money. So I understand taxes are necessary for a country. The government is built for the people of the country. The government should not be overspending on things that don't improve the lives of the citizens that live in the country. It's my main point of this entire video. I love Canada. I love Canadians. But I want to see Canada be great again. And it's sad to me that if this keeps going for another 2, 3, 5 years, there's no chance that I could be a proud Canadian watching this keep happening. That's sad to me. I don't want that. I don't even want to be in that world. I want to be a proud Canadian. Proud Canadian. But it's been hard reading shit like this. I want to see better things going down. Now we're going to move on to just a little bit of some nerdy stuff about the GDP of Canada. I'm going to read a handful of stats off, but overall, it's been pretty stagnant. It hasn't been great. I think there's many, many things that we could have done better. But per capita GDP in Canada has declined for the last 7 of 8 quarters. Q2 of 2024 was 2.8% pre-pandemic levels. Comparative growth from 2019 to 2024, inflation adjusted, it's basically flat. Now, there are a lot of developing countries that are growing a lot every single year. And I absolutely think Canada could be doing this with all the resources that we're sitting on if we just stopped wasting so much money. We're also becoming less competitive in the global market. What was the last great tech startup that you heard of that came out of Canada? We have Shopify, amazing. Hootsuite was amazing. There's hundreds of companies that have been built and started and founded in Canada. But you're seeing more and more of those now come out of the US because of the taxes and all the burdens and all the things that have changed in Canada over the last 10 years. We want to endorse these people. We want to keep them in Canada. We want them to build their businesses. Amazon just released that they're shutting down 2 plants, factories in Quebec, in Canada, because of all the labor laws that we have here. And it's just like, that's not helping the country in any way. So it makes our productivity lag in a lot of ways. You can definitely see it in the technology sector. And then on the trade reliance as well, we still depend on the US for a lot of things. And that is why the tariff question has been so scary to so many people. And so that's just talking about our GDP is basically declining. Another really scary factor, if you ever watch the All In podcast, one of my favorite podcasts that's out there, David Friedberg is always screaming from the mountaintop about rising national debt. We need to stop spending money. So we have also had escalating debt levels in Canada. It's nearly doubled since 2014, 2015. We're at about 2.1 trillion in deficit now and projected to raise at least another 400 billion by 2029, which would put us at 2.5 trillion dollars in debt. And I think it's at the highest levels since 1995 of debt per capita, so debt per Canadian. We have $51,000 worth of debt per Canadian across Canada. All 40 million of us have $51,000 in debt because our country is in that much debt, which is absolutely absurd. In 2024, the budget deficit for Canada was $61.9 billion, 50% beyond expectations. Like, this is just one thing that we need to expose. How did we go from a $30 billion deficit? That's what we were forecasting on the year, to doubling it to $60 billion. If any privately held company or even publicly traded company doubled their expenses, their stock would tank. I can't stress this enough. This is a poorly managed government. How can you miss your forecast by 100%? Like, I guess it's 50% over projections, but either way, I talked about a lot of projects earlier as well, where we completely missed financial forecasts. We have to get better at this. This is a very easy thing to hire some really brilliant people and absolutely dial in where they're going wrong on every single forecast. You could do that. And then a spending surge. We've increased spending in Canada to all-time highs around when we were in 2008. But you're going to see, this is absurd how much money we've been spending, and we need to bring that back down. Now, the final part of this video, I'm going to make this relatively quick because I have very strong opinions on the Canadian medical system. Canada's healthcare, the decline. My experience has always been it's really, really hard to find a doctor, especially just like a general physician in Kelowna. Your wait times are like into the 2-year mark for any available doctor. I've heard mostly bad stories or things getting worse at KGH. If you go to emergency, you're definitely waiting like 6 to 8 hours minimum, depending on what's going on. And I think that's like one of the craziest things we've seen in Canada. So if you just think about the wait times that we have, a national study revealed that on urgent cases, it was like 78 days. or like 25% of those patients wait 175 days to find a specialist in Canada. Like 11 weeks, 25 weeks to find a specialist for like a knee surgery or a wrist surgery, or say you like blow out your shoulder, like to get actual specialists in for the problem that you have. That is an insane waiting time. And then the delivery of like actually treatments and the delays that we have with them are people, like the average median wait time is 30 weeks. And it's an increase of 222% since the 3-week wait it used to be in 1993. These stats I cannot even believe. And I'm going to go down my own little personal rabbit hole on this, but if you've read Peter Attia's book, Outlive, Medicine 2.0, I believe Canada is stuck in Medicine 2.0. We don't fix things from the root cause of what they are. We put band-aids on it. We don't look at people's nutrition and physical activity and physical health, emotional health, mental health, spiritual health, all these things that really matter with sickness. And we really just prescribe drugs. They want to put you on drugs in Canada for the rest of your life. The sicker you are, the unhealthy you are, the more times you have to go back to the doctor. And at the end of the day, they've maximized this system for profits. You can go and look at these pharma companies and how large they've gotten. But we don't need this many drugs. I know some of them are life-saving and absolutely necessary. But at the end of the day, you got to decrease waiting lines and decrease prices. And you have to fix like the specialist side of it in Canada. We don't have enough doctors. Why? You can fly to Turkey, you can fly to Colombia, full body scans, $4,000 or $5,000, DEXA scans, full blood work, dental, ears, eyes, absolutely everything. And it's an incredible experience at these luxury hospitals. And in Canada, our healthcare is free. We pay for it every single month. But at the end of the day, this is not advantageous to Canadians. When we're spending $52 billion in other countries to help them, why wouldn't we fix this in Canada? We have a huge shortage of workers within the actual industry itself. These are huge challenges that it's facing. And it's already strained to what feels like the max. So you have to ask yourself, like, if we're spending this much money in other countries, what's the point when we have these massive issues? We have a massive opioid pandemic in Canada. We need to fix those things, and that money could be better spent. $52 billion would go a long way for our housing crisis, this Medicare, our healthcare system, our schools. There's so many things that this could do. It's billions and billions of dollars being spent every year on wasteful projects when we have these like very prominent problems we need to solve. And that's all I'm trying to get across in this video. I love Canada. This is just a bunch of data I've been like researching for, I don't know, I'd say a week, because I was just interested in it. I feel like these are things that are fixable in the future. It's driving me nuts lately. It's just driving me nuts. And so where do we go from here? I feel like we're at a crossroads. I know there's a lot of chatter out there about the 51st state. You know, if there was a visa to move all your assets or cash that you have, if you cashed out of Canada and they would trade you Canadian dollars for US dollars, I think a lot of people would be interested in that. A lot of businesses would be interested in that. Even if they were willing to pay the exit tax in Canada or help you with the exit tax that Canada is going to charge you for leaving the country, I think you'd see a lot of migration out of Canada. It'd be a really sad thing to see. That's a scary possibility right now. If Canada keeps going the way it's going, which is entirely possible, we're going to be broke, which is scary as a country, nationally, globally. That's a scary thing. Can't go broke as a country. You can see what the US is doing right now. They're exposing this stuff out in the public because it should be public information. I strongly believe that. But at the end of the day, when are we actually going to cut these expenses out and start allocating them to better places? Like, when is that actually going to happen? And it can't happen until there's another election. And then there needs to be massive change within the industry at a national level and a federal level. That's going to take years. So it's just scary times for Canada. I love the place. Like I said, my favorite people live there. My family lives there. I own real estate there. I love the mountains. I love the lakes. I love the wine. I love the golf. There's so many things I love. The hiking we have is incredible. Some of the greatest views you'll ever see in your life we're blessed with all over Canada. We have incredible natural resources. We're just mismanaged right now. And this can be fixed, but it needs to be drastic cuts and quick. It needs to be exposed quickly. And so I feel like the more of us that share these stories, I know a lot of us feel this way. Not everyone. I'm sure I'm wrong on a lot of these points. But I'm just trying to, give an idea of what's actually going on out there. Because this is public information, and it's insane, the more of it that you find out. And so let's just kind of wrap this up. Billions of dollars in taxpayer money has been lost. We have rising taxes, struggling economy, healthcare system at a breaking point, housing prices at all-time high. We have some massive financial mismanagement, and we've kind of explored how immigration, taxation, and public spending are kind of shaping what the future of Canada looks like. And it's not that great for Canadians. But the big question is like, where do we go from here? We're at a crossroads. You can see the change happening in the US. You can see the change happening in Argentina. Massive changes. But I think that these policies are getting worse. I think our taxes are getting worse. I've outlined just stats and data on how much worse that they've gotten. What have you seen in the last 10 years? That's my experience. It's why I spend more time outside of Canada now. I like Mexico. I feel safe here. The weather's fantastic in the winter. I love having warm weather all year round. It's a highlight for me. And so as much as I love Canada, these new options, lower taxes, less laws, they become more and more attractive. So what do you think needs to change? I'm going to keep this conversation going. Next week, you'll have a video about tariffs, and we'll go from there. But thank you for tuning in. I talk more about this stuff on my socials. Follow me there. See you in the next one.